You are not getting younger. It is enough.
No one is barren in our home.
All your mates have children. If Sarah cannot find another woman,
You must marry another wife. Must marry another wife.
you are not getting younger, Fred.
You must marry another wife. We need grandchildren here. No one is barren in our home.
I told him.
Sarah has tried. It is enough. Or try outside until you get children. 3 years in marriage without a child is too much. No one will blame you for marrying another woman. I was 5 steps away.
And that is how I found out my marriage was being dismantled by the same people that blessed it.
The tea tray in my hands trembled.
They did not know I could hear them. That was the first time I understood our silence was no longer private. And from that moment, I changed the way I used to look at myself. This is how silence almost replaced me.
Dear sister, sometimes people said that writing carries what the mouth cannot say. So this is my letter. The story of the first 5 years of my marriage. My name is Sarah. I am 32 years old and I have been married for 5 years. Whatever I heard that afternoon in the kitchen doorway was not the beginning of our struggle. It was only the first moment I understood how serious it had become. That night, I remember very well. My husband did not mention anything. He did not defend me. He did not confront them. He was simply quieter than usual. And for the first time, his silence frightened me. That was the day I started seeing myself differently inside my own marriage. Because the truth is, the silence had started long before that afternoon. Only this time, it landed differently.
3 years in marriage without a child is too much. Sarah has tried. It is enough. Or try outside until you get children.
Tell me, sister, at what point does waiting become shame? At what point does silence begin to sound like failure? 3 years. 3 years of answering the same question. 3 years of smiling when I wanted to disappear. When I got married, I never imagined having a baby would be difficult or stressful. Honestly, it did not even cross my mind. In the first year, everything felt simple. We were the happiest couple in town. People brought baby gifts to our wedding, small clothes. I remember one of my friends had gifted us a very nice light pink colored baby blanket. It had gray color star prints. It was so beautiful. Little socks. We laughed and said, "Oh, soon?" We even prepared one small room. Not officially, but in our hearts, it was already a nursery, a room for our children. I imagined tiny clothes hanging in the sun, yellow, pink, white, soft cotton. I imagined carrying a baby in a soft white carrier. I imagined neighbors smiling and calling me Mama Baby. I wanted that name. Oh my God, I wanted that name so bad. I thought it would come naturally. Every month felt like timing. Not wondering if, just when. I didn't know how heavy it would become. Hope was easy then, in the beginning. But sometime during the second year, something shifted. Not suddenly, just slowly. The jokes became more frequent.
At least next Christmas you will have a baby. Oh, wow. See, we're all hoping.
Do not wait too long. People were smiling. So I smiled too. But quietly, I started counting months inside my head. That was the year I stopped counting out loud. By the middle of the second year, the questions changed. Before, people asked, "When are we celebrating?" Now, they would ask, "Is everything okay?" It sounds small, but it feels different. There's a way people look at you when they are trying to be polite. Their voices are soft, but their eyes are searching. My husband and I started visiting clinics and hospitals quietly. We told no one. We would wake up early and say we were going to town. The waiting rooms were always full. Couples sitting quietly, avoiding eye contact. Nobody spoke, but everyone understood. The tests came back. Mine, normal. His, normal. And strangely, that answer was harder than bad news. The nurse smiled. "Just relax. Give it time." Time. Time began to feel like something I was losing. It will happen. I nodded politely, but I had already learned something by then. Normal does not always mean easy. Every month, I calculated dates. I tracked days quietly on my phone. Every month I prayed, sometimes confidently, sometimes desperately. Every month I felt hopeful for a few days. And every month, disappointment. And then, there's a specific kind of silence that fills a bathroom. When you already know the answer before you look. I became familiar with it. Now, if you know, you know. You sit longer than necessary. You delay looking, even though you already know the answer. And still, you check. There is a certain way disappointment feels when it repeats itself. At first, it is loud. Then it becomes routine. And that was what frightened me. Because pain should never feel normal. One evening, after another disappointment, I opened my drawer. At the very back, I had hidden 2 small baby outfits. Yellow and white, soft cotton. I bought them when I was newly married. Back when hope felt simple. I imagined washing them, folding them, using them. That evening, I held them longer than necessary. Then I folded them carefully, placed them back inside the plastic bag, and pushed them this time deeper back into the drawer. No one knew, not even my husband. Hope was becoming private and heavier. That was the first time I packed it away. Hope. That was also the first time I did not tell my husband how disappointed I was. Maybe I believed I was protecting him. Maybe I was protecting myself. We were still talking, still laughing sometimes, still sleeping in the same bed. But something small had changed. We stopped saying when, we started saying if. It was subtle, but it was there. Sometimes I would catch him staring into nothing. I wanted to ask, "What are you thinking?" But I was afraid the answer would be the same thought living in my own head. What if it never happens? Silence became our safest topic. We talked about work, money, daily things, but never the one thing that mattered most. I wanted us to talk about it, but I did not. Maybe we believed we were protecting each other from shame, from disappointment, from guilt. But without realizing it, we were building silence. And silence does not shout. It grows quietly. And that silence frightened me more than gossip. In my culture, motherhood is not only personal joy. It is identity. It is introduction. People ask, "So, you are married now? What next?" It is how people greet you. It is how they measure success. Without it, who are you? I began avoiding mirrors, avoiding baby showers, avoiding certain conversations. Even my prayers became shorter because I was tired of asking, tired of hoping, tired of bracing myself for disappointment. And sometimes I wondered quietly, if this never happens, will I still belong? Will I still be enough? Then one morning, something felt different, but I did not allow myself to believe it. After years of disappointment, hope becomes dangerous. So I waited. I said nothing. Then one day, I went to the clinic alone. The waiting room looked the same, smelled the same. The nurse checked, looked at the paper, looked at me, looked again. Then she smiled. "Congratulations." For a moment, I could not breathe. After years of silence, one word changed everything. When I told my husband, he simply stared. Then he held me and we both cried, not only for the baby, but for everything we had survived together. Slowly, the whispers faded. The house felt lighter, not because people stopped talking, but because we were no longer carrying the silence alone. Sister, infertility is often treated like failure. But what people rarely see is the strength it takes to survive it quietly. My story is not only about pregnancy. It is about endurance, about love tested in silence.
No one will blame you for marrying another woman.
About standing in a kitchen doorway and hearing people plan your replacement and still choosing to stay. 5 years of silence taught me something. Sometimes silence is not the end. Sometimes it is preparation. When the congratulations came, I thought the waiting was over. I thought the fear would leave once and for all, but I did not know yet. The waiting had only changed shape. The fear did not disappear at all. Hope returned to me gently, But that was only the beginning of another shape of courage. Something happened, and I realized that waiting for a child and carrying one are two different kinds of courage. But here is something no one tells you. Sometimes, the hardest part is not the waiting, and it is not the pregnancy either. Sometimes, the hardest moment comes after hope finally arrives. Because when you have lived with silence for years, you do not know how to trust happiness. You start listening for danger, watching for signs, waiting for something to go wrong. And the truth is, I did not know yet that the first test of that hope was already on its way. I did not announce the good news immediately, not even to my mother. In my church, women say, wait until it shows. Wait until it is safe. Safe. But what does safe really mean when you have waited 3 years? That word followed me everywhere. I walked slower. I carried water more carefully. I stopped lifting heavy pots. I prayed differently. Not desperate prayers anymore. Careful ones. At night, I would place my hand on my stomach, not feeling anything yet. Still small, still flat, no longer empty, but protecting it anyway. I began allowing myself small joys. Looking at baby clothes again. Not buying, just looking. Smiling at names. Imagining tiny fingers. Is it a boy or a girl? All these questions kept running in my head. Because hope, when it returns after a long silence, behaves differently. It was quieter this time. Less confident. More careful. But even careful hope carries a shadow. And soon, that shadow began to grow.
Every small discomfort frightened me. If I felt tired, I panicked. If I felt pain, I imagined the worst. Joy arrived, but fear moved in with it. I avoided Googling, I avoided stories. But women talk. In the market, in church, at funerals. Stories of loss whispered between greetings. And once you have heard enough of those stories, your mind starts finishing them before the end. And once you have waited 3 years, you understand how fragile joy can be. My husband tried to stay calm, but I noticed how he watched me, how he asked, "Are you okay?"
Are you okay, my love? How do you feel?
More than before. That question carried more fear than words. We were happy, but we were also guarding something sacred. And when we finally told our families, everything became louder. The reaction was loud. Ululations, tears, laughter. Suddenly, everyone had been believing all along. My mother cried, she danced, she prayed as if a war had ended. Relatives said, "We told you God is faithful. Finally, He has done it." I smiled, but inside, I felt something strange. Because I remembered the quiet years too clearly. I had needed them most during the silence. Now, they celebrated the result, not the endurance. And that realization changed something inside me. Because during those 3 years, there were nights when I had prayed until morning. Nights when I wondered if my marriage would survive the questions. Nights when I avoided gatherings because I could not answer the same sentence again. Do you have children yet? When? Why are you taking long? Simple words, but sometimes those words can carry years of pain. And now, the same people were celebrating, laughing, dancing, calling it a miracle. Maybe it was, but the miracle had not only happened in my body, it had happened in the quiet places no one had seen. But something else was changing too. Not only in my body, in my marriage.
One evening, my husband and I sat outside as the sun was setting. Children were playing football in the distance. He said something he had never said before. A sentence that explained 3 years of silence. He said, "I was afraid you would think I blamed you." I looked at him. For 3 years, I had carried that fear too. 2 people protecting each other by not speaking. We had both been protecting each other. Silence had not been distance. It had been fear of causing more pain. That night, we spoke openly for the first time in years. About disappointment, about shame, about the whispers, about the thought of losing each other. And something surprising happened when we finally spoke. Pregnancy did not heal us instantly, but honesty did. But even as our hearts grew stronger, my body began to change in ways I did not expect. As my body began to change, so did I, but not in the way people expected, because the biggest change was not happening in my body. I did not suddenly feel complete. I felt humbled because I had learned who I was without motherhood, and that woman was stronger than I knew. I had survived questions. I had survived gossip. I had survived doubt. Strength sometimes grows in places nobody sees. Even if this pregnancy had not come, I would still be worthy. That truth settled inside me slowly, like peace. And then, one morning, something happened. Something so small, yet impossible to forget. In one morning, before dawn, I felt the smallest movement. At first, I thought it was only my imagination. Then again, soft, like a flutter. I did not wake my husband. I just lay there in the dark, smiling, tears sliding into my ears. 3 years of silence. And now, movement. Not loud, not dramatic, just life. But life can change quietly too. And the first warning did not arrive dramatically. It arrived on an ordinary afternoon. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. Nothing dramatic. I was washing clothes outside. The sun was high. The compound was quiet. And then I felt something. A tightness, low in my stomach. Not pain, just unfamiliar. I froze, waited. It passed. I told myself it was nothing. Pregnancy comes with changes. That is what everyone says. But later that evening, I noticed something else. A small stain. Not heavy, not alarming, but enough. Enough to wake every fear I had buried. I did not tell my husband immediately. I sat on the edge of the bed, breathing slowly, listening to the sounds outside. Children playing football in the distance. A motorcycle passing. Normal life. How could normal life continue when my heart felt like it was breaking again? I remembered the bathroom silences from the waiting years. That feeling of knowing before confirmation. I did not want to return there. When my husband came inside, he noticed my face. "What is it?" he asked. I wanted to say nothing, but we had promised honesty. So I told him. He did not panic. He did not shout. He simply said, "Let's go to the hospital."
In hospital smelled the same. Plastic chairs, muted conversations, women holding files against their chests. I realized something as I sat there. Pregnancy does not erase infertility trauma. It sits beside it. The nurse called my name.
Sarah Daniels? Yes, that's me. Please come with me.
Checked me, asked questions. Her face remained calm, too calm. And in that calmness, my mind imagined everything. Loss, return to silence, whispers again. Another year, another explanation. Finally, she said, "It happened sometimes, but we will monitor you." Monitor. Not congratulations, not celebration, just caution. That night was longer than any night in the 3 years of waiting, because this time I had something to lose. I lay awake, listening to my husband breathe. I wanted to wake him, but I also wanted him to rest. I prayed quietly, not asking for guarantees, just asking for strength. Strength if it stayed, strength if it didn't. And in that prayer, I realized something. Even if I lost this child, I was not the same woman who began waiting 3 years ago. Waiting had shaped me. Marriage had shaped me. Silence had shaped me. Loss would hurt, but it would not erase me. And the next morning, we returned to the hospital.
More tests, more waiting, more controlled breathing. Then the nurse looked at us and said something simple. The heartbeat is steady. Steady. Not loud, just steady. I did not cry immediately. I did not celebrate. I simply closed my eyes and exhaled. Fear had returned, but this time it did not control me. For a moment, it felt like we had survived the storm. But the story did not end there. But the next day, on a Tuesday, nothing dramatic, I woke feeling slightly uneasy. Not pain, just a softness in my body that felt unfamiliar. I told myself it was normal. Pregnancy comes with changes. That is what everyone says. I moved carefully that morning, swept slowly, washed the dishes, boiled tea, watched the steam rise longer than usual. Later, I noticed the baby had been quieter. The small flutters I had begun to recognize were faint. I went to Google and searched if it was normal. In one of the paragraphs I read, that you can lay down straight on your back and check yourself. I lay down, placed my hand on my stomach, waited. There, I whispered to myself, but I was not sure if I imagined it. That evening, I did not tell my husband. I did not want to give fear a voice. We ate quietly. The goats were restless outside. The wind tapped against the iron sheets. I told myself, tomorrow will be different. The next morning, I felt the same. I kept throwing up and spitting all the time. Stillness, not complete absence, but reduced, as if something had stepped back. I tried to stay busy, washed clothes, folded them slowly, sat more often than usual. By afternoon, I noticed light spotting, small, enough to interrupt my breathing. I stood very still. Memories from years of waiting returned. Bathroom silences, unspoken dread. This time, I told him. He looked at me carefully, not panicked, but alert. He said, "Let's go tomorrow," gently. That night, we lay awake longer than usual. Neither of us saying the word, loss. He kept his hand on my stomach. as if he could hold everything in place. I stared at the ceiling, listening to his breathing change. It was not steady. By the third day, I already knew. The hospital smelled the same as before. Plastic chairs, murmured conversations, a crying baby somewhere down the hall. I avoided looking toward that sound. The nurse called my name. We walked in together with my husband. The room was dim. The machine hummed quietly. Cold gel, measured movements. The nurse's face did not change, but her silence did. She moved the device again, slower. Then she stopped and called the doctor. My husband's hand tightened around mine, too tight. The doctor looked at the screen, cleared his throat softly. "I'm sorry." Just that. I did not ask questions. I did not need explanation. The room felt far away, as if I were watching someone else lie on that bed. Beside me, I heard something break. Not a sound I had heard from him before. A sharp inhale. Then his shoulders began to shake. He turned away from the bed, covered his face, and for the first time in our marriage, he cried without hiding it. Not loud, but undone. I watched him, and I felt nothing. We did not speak on the way home. The road was dusty. Children were walking back from school. A woman carried firewood on her head. Life was continuing. I watched it all through the window, as if through glass. He wiped his face more than once, cleared his throat, tried to steady himself. "I'm sorry," he whispered at one point. Sorry, as if this belonged to him. I wanted to comfort him, but my body felt distant, heavy, muted. When we entered the house, everything looked the same. The cup I had left on the table was still there. The curtains moved in the afternoon wind. The small baby socks I had taken out days before were folded neatly near the bed. I picked them up, placed them back in the drawer, not dramatically, not angrily, just carefully. My husband sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, crying quietly. His grief filled the room. Mine did not. I sat beside him, placed my hand on my stomach. It was still warm, still my body, but empty again. Our baby had gone. Miscarriage. Sister, 3 years of silence were once broken by one word. Now, silence has returned, not because nothing ever came, but because something did and left. Tonight, the house is quiet again, but this quiet is not waiting, it is absence. He is asleep beside me now, exhausted from crying. I am awake, listening, feeling for something inside me. There is no movement, no flutter, no promise, just stillness. I thought I would break, but instead, I feel suspended, as if my heart has paused, waiting to understand what happened. I do not know what tomorrow holds. I only know that tonight, the silence has changed. I do not know what tomorrow holds, but I know something now that I did not know 3 years ago. Hope can return quietly, carefully, like dawn. And when it does, you hold it with both hands, gently, afraid to breathe too loudly, afraid to move too fast, afraid to believe too completely. But life has a way of testing hope, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. and the next test came sooner than I expected. Something that would change everything. But I did not know that yet. Not until the next day. A woman still learning courage. A woman learning a new kind of quiet.
The day after the clinic, people came. They filled our living room. They spoke softly, prayed, touched my shoulder, said the right words, or at least they tried. You are still young. At least now you know you can conceive. God's timing is perfect. Then they left. The next day, fewer people came. By the third day, no one did. Life outside returned to normal. The market opened. Children played outside. The goats made noise at dawn. But inside this house, time moved differently. My body felt unfamiliar, heavy, tired, empty. There is a particular cruelty in recovering physically after loss. Your body continues, even when what it was carrying does not. I folded away the clinic paper, removed the bracelet from my wrist, placed it inside a drawer, closed it carefully, as if closing something sacred. But silence still found me. At night, I would wake suddenly, expecting movement, then remembering and turning to face the wall.